Again, we have a very, very detailed Moss node here showing you all the trace options for data pump. And if you want to trace, your user needs to be a privileged data pump user, meaning it needs the exp full database or the imp full database role. And make also sure that your max dump file size is big enough, because when you start tracing, you get a lot of trace information, and these trace files tend to become very quickly very big. We have three options to trace. We can trace, first of all, with the trace parameter. So this would be in your par file, or if you're brave enough typing everything on a command line, then put it on the command line. Then the interactive mode, and as third option, put it into the SB file. And let me start here with the trace parameter. So we put it usually in our par file, and this allows tracing even of individual data pump components. So if you want to trace only the workers or only the control process or only the metadata API or whatever, it gives you full control. Still, normally you won't need that. You use that trace option 1FF0B00, and this gives usually enough information even for us in development. So normally we just go with this trace option. You can do full tracing with 3 Fs there, as you see in the slide. But in most cases, that is really not necessary to find out what has gone wrong. When you need more trace information, please revisit that Moss node. It gives you a lot more control and is very well documented there. It generates at minimum 2 trace files. One trace file is for the control process, having the M for master in it, and then at least 1 trace file for a worker. But for each of the workers, there will be 1 trace file. So at least 2 trace files will be generated in the trace directory. And these are the ones you need to upload then with your service request. Then you can trace also in interactive mode. If data pump is running now and you hit a slow situation, no worries, or maybe it's hanging at some point. Then you type Control-C, as we showed you before, in the interactive mode. You are in interactive mode now. Now you attach to your process, to your job. And again, it's very helpful if you have defined a job name in this case. And then you use a trace option. Here we use a different option. But as I said before, the 1FF is the most liked one by us because it has the most important information in it. If it's really hanging right now and not progressing, you can start your job and use the skip current equals yes option, because that will skip the current action and then go on to the next one. That could be useful in such situations as well. And then you can put it also in your SP file or in Aura. So here the event for data pump triggering the trace is 39089. So you would put the event equals 39089 trace name context forever, colon, level, and then the bit mask for the trace event. Not used so often, but you could. Generally, when you deal with such problems, and I think we showed you that before, event 10,046 is really helpful. It's the first event when you start in Oracle support. I think this is the first thing you learn on day 3, how to use 10,046 SQL trace event, because it traces everything happening in a database. And you have certain levels, so you can go to level like 8 or 12 to have the binds and the waits. The waits will be really important here. Binds may not be so important. I use usually level 12, to be frank with you. And this gives me a lot of information. When you have that information, run it through tkprof, and then you get a readable output from that. That is really quickly done. And I think all that is described in this very useful Moss node about 10,046.